Okay, so welcome to the AIP 2025 workshop on how to publish with Sloth, a journal of emerging scholars in human animal studies. So I'm Chris, and as most of you already know, I'm one of the organizers of AIP. And I'm also one of the new Sloth editors. So AIP, it's a student conference that not only features PhD presenters, and we've had many excellent PhD presentations, but also master's students and undergrads are encouraged to engage to present their research, their coursework, and engage in academic discourse. And in this respect, I think that the aims of both AIP and SLARF really do align. And we would love some of our participants to consider publishing in Sloth, which is why I've invited my peers from the journal to join us today. So we'll start with an informative presentation, which will be recorded, and we will share this with everyone afterwards, followed by a panel discussion and some questions and answers. So as I've already mentioned, we will not, it may be recorded, but we will not share it. So feel free to speak up, ask your questions, and don't be shy. We may take notes though, and we may use these. They will of course be anonymized, but we may use these to formulate a commonly asked questions section on the new website. So now I'm going to pass over to Ken Shapiro, founder and president of the Animals in Society Institute, to say a few words about the field and also share the slides, please.
So I'm just going to take 2 or 3 minutes to give a little background about the field. By the field, I mean human animal studies, anthrozoology, animal studies, humalia, and all the other various names that it goes by. So why human animal studies? I mean, there were a number of fields that were studying animals, certainly. Okay, so yeah, those are just some places where we've published sort of state of the field papers, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview of that. As I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself, why human animal studies? There were a number of fields that were studying animals, but they weren't really studying the relationship between humans and animals, and they certainly weren't emphasizing the exploitation issue, which is certainly the subtext of this field. So, how are animals being dealt with in other fields in the natural sciences? In toxicology, the animal was just a guinea pig. In biomedicine and psychology, they were models for human behavior and human pathologies. In the humanities, in literature, for example, they were just a metaphor. In law, they were property. In anthropology, they were cultural artifacts. In most of all of these, the animal was sort of on the margin of the page, and the human-animal relationship was not being addressed very clearly. Another reason for the emergence of this field is that post-World War II, there was a very significant increase in the number of animals across all the different ways in which we use animals that were being exploited. And that led to the development of the animal rights field, the animal rights advocacy, social justice movement. Um, and the need for the field became pretty clear as many social justice movements have a kind of academic counterpart, environmental studies, women's studies, and so forth. So the field sort of developed in terms of its the kinds of other disciplines that contributed to it. It sort of began with philosophy with Reagan, Singer, Midgley, and so forth. And then it moved to sort of the hard social sciences, and then the soft social sciences, and then the humanities, the more interpretive stuff, and more recently, the arts, performative arts, and so forth, have all become interfaced with this field. In terms of the number of disciplines that interface with it, it's something like 24 when I last looked a few years ago. Um, Anything from zooarchaeology to performance arts and everything in between, sociology, anthropology, philosophy, linguistics, rhetoric, history, et cetera, 24 different fields. So the field has grown in an accelerating way, and I think it's still accelerating in its growth. Um, the uh, the number of institutional gains that we've made, the presence of the field actually in the curriculum uh, of the academy, certainly a significant number of courses now, minors, majors, some degree programs, and so forth. So while there's still some hesitation to let this field in as an interdisciplinary field and as one that deals with, my goodness, animals, but it's making some progress in terms of the institutional presence. In terms of politics and ideology, we vary from anthrozoology to critical animal studies with a lot in between. These names have different strategies associated with them in terms of goals. They have different positions on the issues, but the field is broad enough to accommodate at the moment without too much infighting these different approaches. In terms of publications and exposure, it's just huge. We have many major publishers publishing book series. We have uh, podcasts, so it varies from the book series to the podcast. We have, I think last time I looked, we have over 20 journals from Antennae, who has to do with art, to the new journal that came out a few months ago, Animal History. So the field is continuing to really grow and to gain credibility. Uh, and we now turn to Margot, who is basically the brainchild of Sloth. Thank you, Margot. And she'll tell you some about its growth and its present state. And a little bit later, when Joshua comes in, he'll tell you about his plans for the future uh, of the journal as it moves to kinesis. So that's it. Margot.
Okay, thanks, Ken. I do not have any slides prepared. I feel like my contribution will largely be color commentary, and um, anyway, all I want to sort of say is that Sloth was started like so many of the programs that we developed at Animals and Society Institute for strategic reasons, speaking about the sort of strategy and agenda behind the different naming practices. And so Sloth was intended to reach down into the undergraduate level and to really encourage and I don't know, incentivize students entering the field and then continuing beyond the undergraduate level into the graduate level and thus getting their publications started early. We first started talking about this, I believe, in 2014. And so it emerged out of this working group that Ken, through ASI, established back in 2004. That was a whole bunch of us sitting around a table in North Carolina, and we were starting to strategize how to make this field more institutionalized. And so that was 10 years in when we came up with the idea for Sloth. The name and the animal itself, I came up with as sort of a joke and sort of a placeholder until we came up with a new name, a real name, because because Sloth wouldn't be real enough. But then as we talked about it amongst ourselves, and we realized that the sloth has sort of a troubling set of symbolic connotations combined with its current sort of, celebrity status. We looked at the ways that the sloth kind of carries an entire ecosystem on its body, and we thought that there was something kind of fertile there with respect to trying to grow students out of the primordial muck. The slowness, the deliberateness, the carefulness, we also thought that might be a nice lesson. I mean, this was back in the heady days of 2014 before we took the hard turns that we are turning now in our culture. And so but I also noticed there's a newer. It was very homegrown. So the original logo was just done by a contact of mine through the rabbit world. All of the original editors came out of the Human Animal Studies Fellowship Program that ASI and at the end University of Illinois created, and all of the editors, at least during the first 10 years of the journal when I was with it, all of those editors, including the copy editor, all again kind of came from the ASI sort of ecosystem. And which makes it so sort of poetic that Josh is taking it over now at Canisius, because Canisius has always been linked in a lot of ways to ASI, and certainly Josh, as well as some of the other faculty there, their connections to us and to, again, that commitment of developing and expanding the field. There's something lovely about the fact that that's where it's going to end up. So yeah, I'm excited to see it get a new sort of um, um, incarnation, I guess, at Canisius as we move forward. And I definitely hope that students will continue. I still use some of the earliest articles that we published through Sloth in my classes as examples of how to do certain kinds of analyses on a really high but undergraduate level. So I think it has a lot of value in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to keep it, to see it happening in the future.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Margot. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited too to see the journal moving forward. And yeah, we're hoping to publish a few of our newer relaunch articles soon. So well, Gabby, thank you for preparing these slides. I just have a few words to say about the submission process, and then sort of a few tips um, to consider if to before you submit. So I've got a few notes here. I'm going to try and stay on script. So yeah, so Sloth does publish primarily excellent scholarship from undergraduates and recent graduates. So if you go on to the website about submission, it'll say, I think it's worded as 3 years post-graduation, but this is more of a guideline than a hard rule. And it's based on those who follow the linear trajectory from undergrad to master's to PhD. So, for example, if you're a master's student or a recent master's graduate or the early stages of a PhD, it does not matter how long you completed your undergrad. You may have completed your undergrad, gone off and done something else, and then come back 10, 20, or even 20 years later to do your master's. So, yeah. And that's actually why part of the submission process we request a CV, so that well, in part, so we can advise senior PhDs and postdoctoral researchers who may want to consider publishing elsewhere. Yeah, so some key points for submission is it sounds obvious, but really follow the instructions. And this applies to any journal or conference that you want to submit your work to, is to follow the instructions regarding subject matter. So Sloth will publish articles and essays that fit in within the realm of human animal studies. And this can be from a range of disciplinary perspectives, including philosophy, sociology, history, psychology, etc. However, the focus does need to be on interactions and relationships between humans and other animals, or perhaps human perceptions of more than human animals. And it needs to follow the requested style and format, and that's important that you pay attention to that. So you can't just simply submit a student essay or a dissertation without some revising, or maybe even quite a lot of revising and reformatting. Yeah, so the criteria for university coursework is primarily to demonstrate to your examiners that you know how to think. However, published scholarship is about sharing new knowledge and ideas in a concise and accessible format. So You may have written a great essay and we may well publish it, but it might need a little bit of revising to tailor to that audience. So I've just noted some hints and suggestions. Well, first, before you consider submitting your publication, it makes sense to read some of the published papers in Sloth, and as Margot already said, she still uses ones from several years ago. So they're excellent papers to read in their own right, but they also give you an idea of style and what makes a good paper. And again, this applies to any journal that you may submit to it in the future, get an idea of the scope. And also, it's advisable to speak to your supervisor or professor who may have graded your assignment that the paper is based upon. You don't have to do this, but it's advisable. And they may or may not have time to mentor you in revising it for submission, but it's certainly worth reaching out. And you can also reach out to your peers or any other senior academics for critical feedback. So many of us operate on this pay it forward bias, so we've benefited ourselves from friendly, more senior academics, and I think most people are kind of honored the first time somebody asks for mentorship or asks to help out in this respect. So don't be shy to sort of share and solicit feedback. But of course, you respect people's time and understand they may not have the capacity. They may want to, but they may not have the time or the capacity. But it's worth reaching out to various groups or even forming your own peer support group to read and discuss each other's work. So it's a give and take situation. So one important point that I want to raise, if it's based on a final year project, it's highly advisable to ask to let your supervisor know and to ensure that it's all your own work. Yeah, the point about why if it's based on a final year project, depending on the nature of your degree, it may be that contain data from others in the group, or maybe your supervisor had contributed more to it than. So it may not just be your own work. So it's good to check with them to see if they need to be a co-author, and to ensure that you are only publishing your own work and you're not publishing people that you've worked with, their contribution to your final project. So yeah, you may publish with co-authors. So maybe you and somebody, one of your fellow students want to publish a paper together. That's fine if you both agree who's going to submit it. And if you do put a co-author on, you must let them know and get their consent. So don't just put your supervisor's name on your paper. You're responsible for ensuring that they are okay with that. So what next? I'm going to just say a few points. Most of this is on the website. So you follow the guidelines and you submit your paper as instructed. So what now? So Sloth it's a peer refereed journal, and we're selective of what we publish, and all articles submitted to Sloth will go for a 4-stage peer review and revision process. So the article is first reviewed by one of the co-editors, and at this stage it might be rejected on the grounds of being beyond the scope of the journal. So for example, if you submitted a paper on quantum physics, it might be excellent, but it would be rejected because we only publish papers on human animal studies. But if we see your paper has potential, but it's incorrectly formatted and there's a lot of grammatical issues, but we feel it has potential but could benefit from significant improvements in language or structure, we may reject it, but at the same time encourage you to revise and resubmit. And next, if it's judged to be potentially publishable, then the article is sent to reviewers. And if these are positive, as an author, you'll be asked to revise the article for publication. And depending on the nature of the content of the revisions required, the paper may be sent out again for a second round of reviews before going into the final copy editing stage. So yeah, do expect reviewers' comments. Expect some revisions. Everybody gets revisions. And the way I look at it is I try and separate myself from the paper. I produce a paper, I send it for peer review. It may be harshly reviewed, but it's good for the paper in the end. And at the end of the day, it's how you take those constructive criticisms and make the paper stronger. And then once it's the revisions have been accepted and it goes to copy edit, you'll get a formal acceptance and you can put it on your CV as imprint. But yeah, if I've missed anything, feel free to ask in the questions and answers session. And so I'm going to actually hand over to Gabby to maybe tell you a little bit more about the nuts and bolts.
So, my name is Gabriela Daly. I'm talking from sunny Rio de Janeiro. I'm the managing editor, so I'm responsible for overseeing the policies and the best practices for the paper. And today I'm going to be giving you a few tips on how to ace your submission, especially if you're a first-time author. Um, we are creating an extended guideline for authors, and it will be very pedagogical. It will provide you with templates so that you can meet the highest standards and also without feeling lost, whether you forgot something or whether you're doing this right or not. So for now, I'm just going to be giving you a general overview of our best practices, but feel free to ask me afterwards. So the first step would be to segment your paper into conceptual parts, and this may vary between the traditions and humanities and social sciences and also the traditions in the life sciences. So we're going to be providing you a few suggestions. We're currently not enforcing any structure, and this is intended so that you can have some freedom, especially in the creative literary fields. But we do provide you with some guidance about how to best segment your paper, especially depending on whether you're someone from humanities and social sciences or life sciences. But please do listen to the peer reviewers about the structure of your paper and what they think it would serve the paper best. My second tip is for you to prioritize your own material over third-party material in terms of visual work. So photos, copy and pasting of other people's diagrams. You do need to be careful with this. Of course, make sure you always give the credit to the original creator. And if you take, for example, a diagram from someone else, don't just copy and paste. It's always best to do some modification, even if you're going to say modified, and then also cite the sources in the reference. So be very careful about the copyright, because it's not just because it's on the internet that you can put into your paper in terms of material. So just make sure you check the Creative Commons symbol. In most Word, they will have one, or the disclaimers for articles. Usually for published articles, usually you do need permission to reprint the visual material. So make sure you contact the owner in advance if you want to use third-party materials. This may take a while, so think really careful whether you really want to use other people's imagery. And if you do, always make sure to double check. But I always asked to put your own original work into highlight whether other people's work. So this would be my second tip for you. My third tip is about research ethics and anonymization. We are currently requiring an ethics statement to understand how the research was conducted. But don't worry, because we're going to provide you with templates according to the type of research that we get. Some have participants, others don't. So, but even for desk work, etc., work that doesn't need ethics statements, will still require one. And then you're just going to be saying that it was not needed and why. For example, it's just a literature review or things like that. So don't worry, because we're going to support you through this process. And yeah, we're also gonna be providing you with a few tips and linked resources so that you can take a look at ethics frameworks, and how to report and how to be compliant. So it's very important that your text is anonymized. So if you're dealing with participants, especially humans, it's very important that your text is anonymized unless the participants ask to be identified. In my ethnography, this happened a lot. So always respect what your participants ask of you. Be careful with the photos because there might be identifiable information there. So you might have to blur certain parts. So always double check. And unless the one thing that we're going to start to ask is for authors to have an ORCID. So ORCID is basically an open researcher and contributor ID, and it's persistent identifier like a DOI, a social security number, linked to you, just you as a researcher. And it's free and it's required by most journals. So you just need to sign up on their website and then provide us your number, your specific number. And it's super useful for everybody because it's very, very important for authors, because everything that you do in terms of publication will be linked to your own, let's call it DOI, your own personal DOI. So it's amazing. It's very useful especially for authors to have it, and makes you more easily not only identified, but it's easier to find you on the internet. So definitely you want to have an ORCID. And the first tip that I have is about unintended plagiarism. So be careful with copying and pasting without citing. And also in academia, you're not really allowed to submit published work as new. So make sure that the work that you're submitting to us has not been published yet. And be very careful with paraphrasing without citing. Sometimes it's so easy to forget. So it's best practice to document everything using reference managers, and to make sure that you're not forgetting anything, because chaos of writing the paper, it's very, very easy to forget. And plagiarism is a big deal in academia. So make sure you follow this through. And my last tip will be about AI use and documentation. So you will be asked to report whether you have used AI, especially generative AI like DeepSeek and ChatGPT. And make sure you always write down the version of AI that you're using. This is best practice, not just for us. So like, for example, for turbo model, for example. We are going to give you a template so you don't have to worry about forgetting anything. However, we're currently not accepting images that are generated with AI. And then in case that you use AI, make sure you use it in a fair way. So always review and check the content that AI gives you. always ask for the sources and check those sources, because sometimes it gives you sources that have nothing to do with what you asked. Be careful with AI hallucinations, because sometimes the AI gives you non-factual information, straight wrong information. So you need to also understand that there is some confirmation bias built into these models. So for us, you're free to use it, but use it in a smart manner, in an ethical manner, and in a manner that you're actually using your brain. So the AI is enhancing your brain and not just supplanting it. And please just don't copy and paste the content from AI. You really are responsible for the final text. And I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. I'm really excited to be talking here, and I do hope that you're going to be submitting your, for sure, amazing work to us. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to be talking about the future. Please, Joshua.
Thank you, Gabby. Hello, everyone. I'm Joshua Russell. I'm a professor of anthrozoology at Canisius University, and I'm excited to be here today. I have, as Margot said, some history that now feels like long time history with ASI, when I realized I was a fellow in 2011 with some really amazing people. And actually was one of the early sort of I guess mentors when there was more of a mentorship model for Sloth. So I think I mentored maybe 4 or 5 students through the process of submission and publication revisions and things like that. So I was excited when Ken reached out to me in the summer or in the late spring, I guess, to talk about Canisius maybe being the future home for Sloth. And so, spoke with some of the people in our web and marketing team, and convinced them of why this would be, an important thing for us to do, both for the field, but also for us as an institution. A little bit of history in terms of our program. Our program has been around since about 2011. Margot was one of the original faculty of the program. And we've had master students go through it, maybe about 200 master students go through it by now. We have had our own graduate journal since I want to say 2012 or 2013, called Animalia. It was graduate student run. And unfortunately, over the years, Animalia has kind of reduced in terms of student interest and then submissions, and kind of stalled out maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And so I thought this was an opportunity for us to kind of make our way back into the world of publication. I'm really excited that Sloth has a really fantastic, dynamic, experienced international team that I was able to meet. Chris, Gabby, Sandy. I'm sure there's a lot of people that I have not met yet, that I'm looking forward to meeting. And so I'm also excited that we have a graduate assistant that I was able to hire, thanks to Animals and Society Institute, Danielle Shore, who is here with us today. I think she just turned her camera on and waved. And so she is going to help migrate Sloth over to Canisius's website. And then we will consider and think about ways to improve the hosting that we do, and make sure that as the journal continues to grow, that we are giving it everything we have on our end to make sure that it's accessible and aesthetically pleasing, and that all of the information that we need to share with potential authors is there. And I'm really excited that the team has a lot of ideas. So we will do an announcement at some point. It's going to take us a couple months probably to migrate all of the old issues of Sloth to our website and to develop a new sort of submission process. But once that happens, we will sort of put out a release of some sort. And, I think my role or our role in the future of Sloth will be, I guess, kind of determined. So I didn't create any slides because, it's kind of an unfolding process. But I am really excited to be involved again and to have Canisius be a host. So thank you.
I'm wondering if Sandy Burnley is one of the editors. I wonder if Sandy wanted to say a word or jump in.
Hi, everyone. I can do that. I was going to wait till we got into the Q&A portion, but I
Whatever
can
you
do
like, whatever you like.
Well, since I
Go
have
ahead.
this platform. Hi, everyone. My name is Sandy Burnley. I am an assistant professor at Michigan State University, where I teach large format courses based in interdisciplinary sociology. And I firmly contend it is impossible to teach human-oriented sociology alone, right? Like there's no such thing. So other than human animals will indubitably creep up in almost any topic, which is what brought me to Sloth as a co-editor. My area of expertise resides in humanities and literary analysis with an animal focus. And I turned to animal studies after spending way too much time in veterinary medicine, not to knock anyone who is currently in vet med. When I tried to switch gears to something more interdisciplinary, I couldn't get into a literary grad program because what was the use of having 5,000 hours in a medical clinic, according to them. So Sloth is near and dear to my heart. It sort of springboarded my entire career while I was applying to grad school. It showed that I could do the work. And for those of us applying to grad school now, that's part of it, right? You have to show that you are already a grad student before you're ever accepted into a grad program. So it showed that I could converse with the state of the field. At the time that I published in Sloth, one of its very first renditions, animals in literature were widely anthropomorphized and treated as metonyms for broader sociological issues. And that today, I think, is acknowledged that that can flatten or erase their existence and their contributions. So Sloth served as an opportunity to present friendly challenges to that ideology. And as a professional, while Chris mentioned the work in review is vigorous, what I appreciate about working with maturing academics is that Sloth allows you to dip your feet in the water in a fairly friendly atmosphere. In fact, my first reviewer still serves as a model of how I now review publications or potential publications. So it'll allow you to develop the skills to think critically from varying frameworks, which is incredibly important for such a robust field. As Ken mentioned, we have like 25 different disciplines and angles you can take to explore human-animal relationships. So it makes you quite marketable when you can speak to a broader audience and not just be a published author, but get other people in any field to care about why animals. So we welcome all contributions.
Thank you, Sandy.
And Michael, are you there? Did you want to say a few words too?
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Michael Briscoe. I'm an assistant professor of sociology at Colorado State University, Pueblo. And for Sloth, I am an associate editor, which means that after you submit something, the co-editors look at it, say this can be publishable, and then they pass that off to me. And it's my job to, invite reviewers that might have some expertise in that area. And so I'll be the one, looking at those reviews, getting people and kind of working with you to get that paper where it needs to be published.